So what was it earlier you wanted to touch base on?
Oh man, where do I begin?
Mm-hmm.
Grown people thinking they grown.
Grown people thinking they grown. I'm listening.
That's the best way I can explain it. There's this thing in America where everybody think they grown. Everybody think that they're grown and they can do grown things, and that magically makes them grown. uh, I don't know what the hell in America is drinking, sipping on whatever, but they on some shit because magically when you turn 18, you get all these powers. Like you can stay up all night, you don't have a curfew,
Right.
you don't have a Cinderella license. Um, Before, um, you were able to buy tobacco products at 18.
Right.
Thankfully, that law was changed where now you have to be 21, right? A lot of people won't agree with me, but again, how you able to buy all these products and you have no knowledge of what you're doing at 18, right?
Right.
And it's like you get this freedom because America says you're 18 and you can do whatever you want.
Right.
And it's so funny because people literally don't know how to wipe their behinds. Like, people literally don't know how to clean themselves, don't know how to take care of themselves, but magically they grown enough to do grown people things. Like, what does that even mean? You know what I
I was just
mean?
about to ask you what defines somebody as grown nowadays.
In this new generation, it's wicked, bro. It's so wicked in the sense where you're 18 to party, 21 to drink type shit. It's like I'm grown because I have my own apartment, I have my own car, I have my own life, I'm in a relationship, and I'm doing things that grown people are supposed to do. I can't even explain to you because I'm still trying to understand how these teenagers at 18 are claiming to be grown. Do you understand?
Right.
Like, these people can't cook for themselves. These people can't sit here and, fix their clothes. Like, if they have a hole in their pants or, they zipper break or something, they don't know how to fix that.
Right.
Back in the day, in middle school, I was fortunate enough to go to the classes called home economic or home ec,
Right.
where we had cooking, we had sewing class, we also had the metal shop and the wood shop where we was able, to learn how to build things and create things, with the help of a grown up.
Right.
And it's like they took all those good classes, and I don't know what they substituted with, because again, I'm not, going to school in this generation. But
Right.
they took all those good classes, and now America grown, doing grown things, but can't even cook, can't even clean, can't do shit.
Hmm.
You got these teenagers or these young people, because I don't even know at what age anymore, but you got these youngins on these technology devices, whether it be a tablet, a cell phone, a computer, a desktop, whatever.
Right.
And these people, the guardian or the parent or the adult that's, taking care of them
Right.
is giving these devices, and they're like, here you go, be entertained while I go do grown things that grown ups do.
Right.
And it's like, but wait, you're actually babysitting a child, and that's part of being a grown up, and that's part of doing grown up things.
Right.
But you cheating your way out of shit to not be able to watch that child or educate that child.
Mm-hmm.
So again, what is being grown and doing grown up things? It's classified under so many things, and that statement is so tainted in so many ways. And it's like, is America really understanding what they doing? Are
Right.
they meaning what they say and saying what they mean?
I
Because a lot of people are just,
I always thought being grown was a level of maturity, and it's just a lot of people want to take claim on a lot of labels that they're not. Because like I said, I'd have seen 70, 80-year-olds still be big babies, you know? So I think it's just a level of maturity, because you can spend your whole life claiming you're grown and never really grew up, you know? So just so for someone to simply say, I'm grown, I also take that like that's a cop-out, you know? People cheat their way in life and say, I'm grown. That's a cop-out. Because if you're really grown, you shouldn't have to really be in check. You know, why don't you, without getting too much into the details, break down what inspired you to talk about this topic, like off of today's situation?
So,
you're handling your
you know,
business. You're doing what you gotta
I got,
do. Uh-huh.
right.
Go ahead.
So I got this thing called a job, right? For people that don't know what a job is, it's what grown people do, right?
Right.
Right. So I'm at work, you know, handling my handles, you know, being a responsible adult, right?
Right.
And I work with a lot of different people, a lot of different ages.
Right.
And I came across this individual that's very young, and what ended up happening was we were having a conversation. One thing led to another, and the statement came out, I'm grown. And I was like, okay, what makes you grow? I do grown things, was the response. I'm like, what is that? And she was like, yeah, you know. And I'm like, I don't know. And she couldn't even explain to me what being grown and doing grown things meant. And I look at this individual, they in their 20s, you know.
Let me help the situation for the audience that really doesn't know what you're really talking about. Okay? You're at your job today, right? You're working with someone who is in their early 20s, you say?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're working with somebody, and an older gentleman walks in with 2 children, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this older gentleman is originally going there for a service, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, when they saw this young, early 20-year-old, the gentleman pretty much neglected the children and started attending to this 20-something-year-old, right?
Correct.
And this 20-something-year-old, does she have any children?
No.
Okay. So she bypasses that she has no children, seeing that he has 2 kids. And what were the kids doing while he was tending with this young lady? What were the children doing?
Whatever they wanted to, running around, doing their thing.
So they were just running all over the place.
Yeah.
And the parent had to be notified that your children are running all over the place. You need to tend to your kids, right?
Several times.
Several times. Now, this gentleman was very in tune to this young lady, right?
Correct.
And this young lady reciprocated the same energy in being more in tune to this gentleman neglecting her job, correct?
Correct.
So, upon that, she bypassed, seeing that this gentleman had 2 children, was quickly neglecting his 2 children to go and tend to this young lady for personal matters instead of what he originally showed up for. And when you check this co-worker to remind her of her job duties and to get her in check with what's really going on, her response to you was, what was her response?
I'm grown.
I'm grown. So, she was grown, not understanding the gentleman was in his 30s?
Yeah.
In his 30s, had 2 children, approaching a young lady with no children, and right away, she bypassed that this gentleman is not even capable of handling his responsibilities, but is more in tune with getting with the next female. Is that correct?
I couldn't have said it better, bro.
And pretty much her response was, I'm grown. You see? And that's the problem in today's society is everybody's grown. But what they don't understand is you play dirty, you win dirty prizes. Is this young lady in her early 20s mentally stable?
I personally would say no, because I come from a generation where this definitely, you can't act like this, you get beat up. Like, come on.
But
This is not a way to act.
right. So, would you say she was acting like a lady?
I mean, I would say she acted like a teenager. This is what teenager things do.
She acted like a teenager. So even with her acting like a teenager, would you say it's safe to say that this lady in her 20s acting like a teenager, it was okay for her to be having this conversation with a grown man in his 30s?
Definitely not.
So, what I'm getting to is this, and a lot of people don't understand and reflect on this, is a lot of these young ladies, especially in high school, they deal with these older men in their 30s out of high school. And a lot of folks never really look into a lot of, what they call it? They go from pedophilia to, what's the terminology when it comes to dealing with minors? But make a long story short, people go to jail for things like this, correct?
Yeah, it's called, endangerment of the welfare of a child.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, their mind isn't even on a grown-up level.
Right.
Their body is more mature than their mindset. And it's a whole mess waiting to happen.
Right. And you know what's crazy is, a lot of people, they don't know how real that fire is, so they get burnt. And it's crazy is, you remember, like, even, there will be parents that would tell their children, don't touch the stove or you're going to get burnt. And some children still want to touch that stove. But some people, they touch the stove over and over and over, wondering why they got scars and they get burnt. And then they turn around and blame the world and everybody else, not knowing you the one that didn't learn and kept touching that hot stove. So where do we learn with this? Where is the learning?
And that's a great question. Where is the learning? Because, again, all the grown-ups, right, doing grown things and stuff, right? When you come to the youth, all they want to do is shove a damn tablet device or a, electronic device, a phone, whatever it be. Here you go. And then God only knows what they watching on that device. You know what I mean? So it ain't like how we were born in the old days. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
In the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, and so forth. Like, where is that education? That's the $1 million question. Where is it? Like, do we take this, situation of an older man and a younger girl, and do we take them and say, hey, sit down and school them,
Right.
Start doing the right thing? Or do we just, mock the situation, right? Make a comedy out of it or make a joke out of it? Because, again, these are real life. This is somebody's life,
Right.
Like, this is not how we need to be living. We need to stop the generational curses. We need to stop whatever spells are cast upon us. And I think by coming together as a unity, we can, as a group in America, be able to pass on that knowledge, keep the wisdom going, from one soul to the next.
Right.
But we all got to be willing to put in that work. And for some, they cop out, say, I'm too grown, doing grown things. Well, I don't know, but doing grown things means putting in that work in every single situation you come across.
This is where it gets really scary. a lot of the knowledge and the wisdom and understanding usually would come from the elders. A lot of the elders are no longer here. A lot of the wisdom and knowledge goes with them. If the next generations don't carry that on, eventually all of that will phase out. Then what does the future generation have to learn from? You see, it's like folks don't want to hear the fruits. They don't want to get that knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, but at the same time, when it's completely gone one day, what are they going to have to look for? What are they going to have left? We're really heading into a time where there's going to be a lot of, what would you call it, bastard children, where they're going to be children that grow into adults that really don't have a clue. They're going to spend their whole life trying to figure out life when they could have learned this all along from when they were young. You ever heard that term, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks?
Yes.
And I try to tell a lot of folks, break that habit and teach the youth. Because once they get grown, once they get older and they're grown, and they live their life, trying to teach them something later, it's a lot more difficult than you would have had a chance if you would have done it while they were young. Consistency is always key. I've always told folks you got to be consistent, especially with children. You got to be on top of it. You know, children need discipline. You know, what you give them while they're young, they'll be able to carry it into their adult lives. And when I hear folks that are in their adult years saying that they're grown, but they're not representing that growth, it makes me look a little bit further at their environment and who really raised them. And if you really ask questions, a lot of times they were neglected, abandoned. Nobody simply cared enough to teach them. Where do we go from there? Where do we go to actually let folks know that this is important? This will save lives, because a lot of people don't realize they play games until life plays back. And many times in life, it's not playing fair. And you don't get a pause. Give me a minute. Let me clock out. You keep playing with the devil, he comes knocking on your door. He ain't leaving very easily. And I think a lot of people, they play with fire, and sometimes that fire burns the hell out of them. And then they cry a river, point fingers, but who's taking accountability? Who's claiming responsibility? I see too many finger pointing, and everybody's grown, but nobody's doing grown shit. Help me understand that.
Everybody grown, but nobody got their shit together. Like, people need to wake up, smell the coffee. And it's fucked up, because you did mention, like, you know, there's people out here without no guidance, right? You know, there's children out here without nothing. So they have to, you know, grow up and teach themselves. So that's a whole nother separate situation than having the guidance, right?
Right.
But at some point, where there's a will, there's a way. Somebody got to sit here and really reevaluate the situation and say, hey, I know from right and wrong, and this is what I should be doing, versus, hey, let me dance with the devil until I can't dance with him no more, or I'm so tired, and then want to come over to the other side, because the other side is green grass, there's, you know, crops, there's all this to enjoy the fruits of the labor that they didn't put in, but somebody else did. Again, everybody wants to sit here and take shortcuts. Everybody wants to sit here and take the recognition of somebody else's work and be like, hey, I did that, you know, and not really put in that work to do that. And it's like, you're corny for that. You're real corny. Like, where do you begin to work? And I think also, too, you know, it comes back into the programs that are available out here in the world, the government assistance.
Right.
There are plenty of assistance available throughout the government. However, you have to be at a certain criteria, you have to meet certain requirements, and so forth. So for the people that have nothing, that should be a no-brainer. You should be able to get those assistance from the government and be able to use it wisely and for your own benefit to get your shit together,
Let's take it a little deeper. Since you bring up the government, why do we have a government? And I say this.
Why do we have a government?
And I say this because if our communities govern our own people, we really don't need a place for a government. Who told us we need a third party to regulate our lives? That's like saying, hey, I want to put you in power to force us to do the right thing. When if we did the right thing amongst each other, amongst our communities, would we really need to have a purpose of a government?
It's absolutely not.
It's almost like, and again, it gets very deep because I'm always talking about spiritual things. You know what I'm saying? But it's like God gives people rules of life, and the enemy says, "Yo, I know God gave you rules of life, but guess what? Give me some of that control, and I can show you a better way." But if God knows best, there is no better way. That is the way. But it only takes one bad apple to say, "Here, let me see what you can do with it." And the enemy's gonna be like, "All right, you give me this, I'll give you something in return." But little do people know, he's tricked people along the way, over and over. Because at the end of the day, even he knows God gave us everything we needed. But he's tricked us. So over time, people gave in, allowed the enemy to step in. Slowly but surely, the enemy is taking power, manifesting its face into the lives of people's day-to-day living. Now folks have allowed the enemy to be the spokesperson and pushed God to the side, to the back. That's why, in my opinion, things are truly falling out of place. A lot of people turn their back off on God and started facing the enemy. If we really turned our ways back to God, which his rule was law to help govern us in love, we really would have no reason for government. Everything good God done gave to us, and we presented to the world. You always got your enemy/government tapping on your shoulder saying, "Hey, that's cool. We got to poke our nose into it though. We got to regulate that. We got to make sure that this works for..." It's like they put everybody in a box when God created everybody individually unique. A lot of people have different talents, different perspectives, different ideas. And you always got somebody on your shoulder trying to tap into that, trying to tell you what to do with your God-given talent, goal, and idea. And that's something I never vibed right with at all. Because if God gave this to me to be set free and to help other people, what's the problem?
Again, going back to all that core you just talked about.
Right.
The problem is grown people doing grown things. People not getting their shit together. People thinking that just because you do one thing that makes you grown, then that's it. There's a whole bunch of issues with people in general. Like, I brought up the government, you got into it.
Right.
Like, all this medicines, right?
Right.
That they have in the world, it fixes our issue, right? But then somehow, some way, there's a side effect.
Right.
Like, how do we have medicines to fix one thing, but then causes another problem?
Right.
So, hey, let me fix problem A, but just know because you're taking this medicine,
Right.
now problem A is going to go away, but now you have problem B, C, and D.
Right.
And it's like, okay, well, stupid people would be like, okay, let me just get rid of problem A to have problem B, C, and D.
Right.
And then, people who have a little bit more intelligence will be like, is it really worth getting rid of problem A to then have three other problems? So it all comes back to mankind relying on mankind.
Right.
And I think that's the greatest problem, the greatest downfall, because with this thing called free will, we have the freedom to do whatever we want technically, right?
Right.
And people abuse that free will in so many different ways. And the consequences are never severe enough because these same people that are abusing the free will don't understand it, don't get it, or don't care, and they keep abusing it. And then it comes whisper down the alley where everybody else is doing the same shit, following the same stupid. Hence, we have America high on whatever we have it on,
Right.
and the division is so great that there is no village to raise a kid now. Because that whole village has been murdered, slaughtered, whatever it was, and now that village became nothing, and that child has nothing to, no wisdom to grow up with and understand how to live life and do grown-up shit.
You know what's crazy is when I hear folks say I'm grown, it's like they're proclaiming so they can hear themselves say, I'm grown. Like that's their defense. And it's funny is because folks are grown, everybody's tough. But when it's time to do grown stuff, and a lot of it is tough, they fold. I done seen some of the toughest people face some darkness, and they done folded. When things got really real, they pleaded the fifth. They begged for mercy. And it's like, what happened? I thought you was tough. I thought you was grown. You know? And they gotta be like, no, chill. I done seen these things. And this is why when a lot of people put that hard shell, like they gangster, they tough, they this, they that, it becomes repetitive when you done seen so much of what's to come. Because I'm gonna break down something to you real quick. And I don't know if I ever shared this story with you, but make it real quick. I remember there was a woman who was a Muslim. And she converted over to Christianity. Not to get too deep into it, but where she was from, they pretty much threw her in jail. And they allowed her to have a little bit of time to kind of pretty much say goodbye to her family. But she knew just by transferring her faith, she could kind of lose her life. Through that window of opportunity for some miracle, she was allowed to have a passage to find her way out. She stood firm in her belief in God, let's just say. And make a long story short, without getting too deep into it, she made it out, and she got closer with the Lord from her newfound belief. But it made me look back that a lot of people, a lot of men, a lot of tough people in her position would have folded, would have gave in, knowing you're about to lose your life just by simply converting into what you believe. And we've come to a point where people no longer can speak their mind, speak their thoughts, share what they believe in without being persecuted. Everybody's grown, but they don't realize right now all that grown is still being regulated. So how grown are you when you're restricted on how to live?
Or even better, how grown are you if you don't even know how to move?
Yeah. Yeah.